Marcos Tanda Bibiana and Catalina Rojas here for our live stream of the 5th episode of the 9th season of our Social Change Career podcast. Now we're doing a live stream. This session is supported by the Rotary Peace Fellowship. Please check it out. It's one of the coolest fellowships in the world for change makers. They offer a full master's fellowship at one of 6 universities in the world, or a 3-month certificate program either in Thailand or Uganda. And today we're delighted to have Marcus here with us. He's going to be talking about peace building, creativity, and wellness, and basically how to link your passions and hobbies to actually careers. And Marcus has had a very interesting, in-depth, and creative career, and he's got about 10 years applied experience in peace building, evaluation, Photovoice journalism, creative arts, and has worked around the world. Just came back recently from, I think, 15 months in Somalia. He's a Rotary Peace Fellow from Uppsala University in Sweden, so he can talk a little bit about the Rotary Peace Fellowship. He teaches at Hamburg College in Canada, and really we've gotten to know him only online, never in person, so it's COVID, but one of the most thoughtful, engaging, creative professionals that we know, and always thinking about the combination of ethics, practice, and impact. And so just for people who are joining us for the first time, you either watching this on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, or listening to the podcast episode later. So Catalina and I will ask some questions of Marcus, and then if you have comments, you can put them preferably on LinkedIn. That's our main channel, and we'll try to bring in some of the questions and comments from LinkedIn. Please also check out the 100+ other episodes of the podcast with amazing innovators from probably 25 countries from all corners of the world. So Kata, if you want to start with the first, and thank you again, Marcus. And Kata, if you want to start with the first question.
Thank you so much, Craig. Marcus, I want to tell everyone that you were one of these colleagues that we met during the 2020, the pandemic, when we were in lockdown, and we had a community. We met every Thursday just to give each other support, and your contributions, your presence, your constant support to everyone helped me and helped everyone to go through these very interesting times. So I'm so happy to have you as a guest in the Social Change Career podcast. Now we can see each other, but later on, who's ever listening to audio can hear. And well, first things first, would you give us a highlight of your career? Because Craig left us very intrigued with your very unique path.
First of all, I'd just like to say thank you very much to both of you, Craig and Kata. I really do appreciate not only the work that you do for social impact, but the place which it comes from, which I feel is, very, very mindful, very giving, and it inspires me to also share too. And Craig, thank you for the very generous introduction. And hello to everyone who's listening on the various streams, either live or after the fact. So I think a major career highlight for me, I've worked in many different short-term positions, but the things that stand out for me are not necessarily things that will go on the resume. But what stands out in my career are little turning points, which have revealed to me information that I had been seeking for a long time. So for example, I'll give one example. In 2014, I was working in Somalia with UNDP as a governance specialist. It was my first time in Somalia, and funny enough, when I was studying in university, one of my Somali friends told me out of the blue, he said, "One day I know you're going to go to Somalia and work." And I had no idea why he said this. Obviously, I love the culture very much. I had some Somali friends in university. And I had that moment where I remembered exactly what he said. But I'll say a turning point for me, and a theme around this talk around peace building, creative arts, and wellness, was just based on my time spent online in Somalia, because obviously I'd known a bit about the country before, reading a few materials, whether it was a mix of blogs, things on social media, the occasional academic article, and things for work on the state of governance and politics. But and just doing a quick Google search of Somalia, I can't remember if I did that on purpose or by accident back in 2014. I noticed a deep imbalance between the imagery that was online versus what I was seeing with my own eyes in Garowe, which is the capital of Puntland state of Somalia. And what I noticed in the beginning was dominant images of the insurgency groups in Somalia, of drought, of famine, of poverty. And the city that I was living in was actually the capital. At the time, it was about 50,000 residents. Very good infrastructure, very safe, very peaceful. I was walking around when I was there. So I noticed this, but then I also noticed a photographer who posted on Instagram. I won't mention their name, but they were very famous and they're European descent. Posted a picture of a young lady from Somaliland, the semi-autonomous region of Somalia. And the post was not about the image, but was about his bravery from going to Somaliland and his friends telling him about, don't get kidnapped, be careful, things like that, and all sorts of negative imagery. And he sort of glamorized his visit there by the fact that he was brave enough to go to what is actually the safest part of the country. And anyways, him and I had a long back and forth dialogue. A few others joined in about how he was sort of uplifting his own position as a privileged visitor, also putting down the image of Somalia, which in my opinion was not correct. So this was actually one of the inspiration points which allowed me to link photography to peace building and social impact. And it's one of those moments which had me starting taking photos, which sort of launched my interest in photography. So I'll say that's a really key point that I don't get to talk about a lot about in job interviews.
So thank you so much, Marcus, and great. Everyone, please keep the chats coming. So we've got, I think, from 10 different countries, from Pakistan to Nigeria to Colombia to the US to Canada. So please feel to put in your questions and comments. And Marcus, one of the things, I did my dissertation, PhD on peace building and arts in Bosnia-Herzegovina. So one of the things, there's a lot of interest in arts in the world, and we need more interest in peace building. But how in the world did you develop your artistic skills in terms of, did you do training in photography and other arts-based processes? And one of the things I like to talk about, if this is arts and this is peace building, that funding circle in the middle is very small. So how in the world did you start to navigate both as your hobby and professionally that intersection of, building the skills, but also finding ways to earn a living from it?
Yes, it's a great question, and you still have to send me your thesis. I would love to read it. It's very rare we find theses on peace building and creative arts. I'd say for the most part, peace building and arts, they exist in their own separate silos. I'd say my interest drove from that point which I mentioned. But I was actually right after that position, which I work with UNDP. I went to Uppsala University. I was a Rotary Peace Fellow. Very grateful for the support in my education and practice in peace building. So I was challenged a lot by what was, what I felt was missing in the fields of peace building and arts. And obviously, they're both very vast fields. There are many gaps that one could fill. But I didn't find a lot of research on the creative arts. So for example, Photovoice is a participatory photography program which is geared at a social change. And the social change could be, something very dramatic, such as a policy change or implementation, or something more output oriented, such as a photography exhibit between groups who are facing intergroup tensions or conflict. So I found in the few studies on creative arts and peace building, they were often done by persons who were strictly researchers or peace researchers. I didn't really see a draw to the arts from those persons, or I'm not sure if I could identify them as artists. And I understand that labeling an artist is sort of a tricky aspect. I believe that if you have the, the will, the love to create, you're an artist, whether you have a million followers, 10 exhibits, or whether you just do it for yourself. But I felt like some of the few studies I found, they seem to lack perspective from the artist. And that's the main point, which I think I drive a lot in my work is perspective. So perspective meaning, say you're working on a humanitarian project, you have requests from the donors, you have requests from government, you have requests from the NGOs. Even from NGOs, they may have a competing dialogue between their headquarters and their area level offices, which are working in communities. Headquarters might say the field areas offices are not doing enough. Inversely, the field area office may say HQ is asking for too much. They don't understand the things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, may not visit us, don't see that there are bureaucratic challenges regarding authorities, for example. So I noticed that a lot of the studies coming out of my university are very quantitative, and there were not really much talk about how arts could link. And I find that a lot of my topics during that year that I was researching on had been challenged because, for example, my first research was on the nonviolent resistance from the Sudan revolts, and the academic sources I could use were blogs and newspaper articles. This was challenging for an empirical university. However, I had to respond in front of the entire class that the reason there's no empirical studies on peace building in Sudan or human rights in Sudan is because of the dire human rights situation there and um, the repressive state at the time. So I said that using blogs, using art, using newspaper articles, whether they're biased or not, is the only way that I can construct something in the form of an argument. Or I could just write, one of thousands of studies on, say a very tried and true case, such as the Rwandan genocide, for example. So as I researched a little bit more, I learned about Photovoice, which I mentioned earlier. And I thought, now that I'm getting into photography, and I actually had an exhibit based on my experience in Somalia, but framed from the reflections that I had gotten from various persons while in Somalia. So I saw the outcome of during the exhibit. I saw the outcome of um, ethnic Swedes and also Somali Swedes getting together. Somali Swedes teaching and sharing information about Somalia. Um, Ethnic Swedes realizing that it's not as violent a place as they had learned to be, and even some of them in the video recording they made said they're interested in visiting. So seeing that change in peaceful coexistence and associational engagement got me thinking that I can speak, to some extent to both sides, the research, the policy aspect, the implementation as someone who's doing Photovoice and later become a Photovoice facilitator on social justice photography, journalist. And I just saw that multiple perspectives are what allow you to perceive with more mindfulness in this industry and put yourself in someone's shoes based on lived experience rather than imagining what it feels like to yourself.
Thank you, Marcus. And I have and the next question, but just to clarify, just to know if I heard you correct or if I understood, you have been an academic, and so is that how you have been funding your more arts related projects, or did I misread how has it been, or maybe the arts projects through grants you have been able to make a sustainable living?
So the art side is definitely in the minority in terms of my income generation, but it's by design. Because when it comes to arts, for example, if I were a full-time photographer and I consider that route, I'm not extremely interested in, say, wedding photography, but I know wedding photography pays well. Um, if I'm doing any sort of journalism or even, working with a social enterprise, I have to feel some connection to that person or entity from a personal standpoint. Um, So that way, this allows me to be very selective about which jobs I take. So the majority of jobs I've had are as a facilitator of Photovoice. Most recently with JAYU, which is a Canadian organization which works on social justice and arts. So I'd be a social justice and photography mentor, working as a lead artist on an 8-week program with youth. And during this program, I support the creative process which the youth are leaving on their own projects. So for example, we had some youth create projects on First Nations governance in Canada. So we talk about everything from the creative process to mood boarding your concept, to captioning, to mock galleries, and also looking at other aspects such as the sector of photography, getting jobs, things like that. And so it's a creative program led by the youth, and it's also a mentorship in that we can work together, share ideas, share reflections, and some of these youth who have been in the program as participants are now paid mentors. Bringing the cycle of sustainability. For some of my artworks, it's been commissions, whether it's a news house on the occasional assignment. I've also done some prints for some historical books as well too, offline. And my exhibit was actually funded by Rotary, and with also support from a museum in Uppsala, Sweden called Fridens Hus, which means peace house. And I honestly couldn't think of a more perfect venue to have it, although very stressful when I was trying to do a master's full time. But this exhibit became my priority.
Wow, so interesting. Craig, can I follow up? Thank you. And I just want to highlight the moment you said that you do it by design, that has been intentional, that you preserve your independence and you choose which art projects and how to get funded. So it all sounds super amazing, and maybe there's fellow peace builders or artists or both here listening. So let's talk a little bit about what have been the obstacles, and is it too much hustling and it gets tiring, or on the contrary, you love it?
So definitely hustling is a common theme over the past 10 years. So I've sometimes get some confusion on my CV because I started off as I did 2 paid internships, another one to start off, which is unpaid while I worked on the side in a call center. But I intentionally took short internships that were 2 to 3 months, and I attached myself to a specific deliverable. So, for example, um, a youth development organization I work with, they didn't have a monitoring and evaluation system, and they needed someone to carry out an evaluation. This was back in 2011. And I had very minimal background on M&E, but I had some generalist experience as a project officer with an eye and motivation for monitoring and evaluation. So in that 1.5 months, I spent 1 week doing an insane desk review on small monitoring and evaluation systems, feasible tools, manuals or documents that are useful, trainable material, things that work well with youth. And I constructed an evaluation, but I worked with some of the staff to facilitate the evaluation rather than doing it myself, so that I'm also learning by sharing how to do things with others, and also forcing myself to have a 1-month deadline to conduct this evaluation, but also ensure that I am sharing a final product, which is a manual and training material on monitoring and evaluation. So I was doing very short internships like that. So I accumulated a lot of experience over a short time. And it just naturally happened that 80% of my career has been as a short-term consultant. Um, it is a hustle because you spend a lot of time writing proposals. Proposals may be 20-page proposals. You may do it alone or you may do it in a team, but that's work which you might otherwise get paid for if you were a full-time program officer or development manager. So in order to excel have a good business model with short-term consulting, it's good to have 3 or 4 organizations which give you regular business that is inbound, so them reaching out to you after you have done a good job. So there's always legwork which is involved. It's either doing well with your first assignments, or say you spend 3 or 4 years with one company, and then when you leave them, you enter a long-term consulting agreement. Um, I'll be honest, I do spend a lot of time, nurturing my network, building, also sharing as much as I can as well too, and just being strategic about the job applications. I know it's good to do volume, but sometimes I have to be sort of strategic and look at what will make most sense for my sort of quote unquote work plan of the year.
So please keep your questions and comments coming. So one question, Marcus. I mean, you're crazy enough, I say that in a positive way, to kind of pursue this unorthodox career where you've done a lot of interesting work around the world, been able to build a steady living. When people are thinking about this combination of passion, purpose, hobbies, and making enough to pay the bills, whether it's arts or technology, or like, what is your advice for someone who's trying to figure out how their skills, passion, and abilities connect to the job market? Like, how do you test it out? Because lots of people say follow your passion or purpose, and that can be useful, but it's also very dangerous if there's the famous Igagi model, like what the world needs, what you're good at, and who's willing to pay for it. So how do you know that what your passion is, there's a way to both have an impact ethically, but also pay your bills?
So for me, that's a great question, really important too, because if someone simply says follow your passion, they may have a different lived experience from the person they're sharing the advice with, right? There are some people who are able to pursue their passions, without any financial repercussions, for example. So I think it's important to think about how you spread your time. So for example, if you have a job or a gig that pays the bills, I think it's good to hang on to that, because your wellness helps your passions, and your passions also help your main running implementation, or your main gig, whatever that is. Um, and even if you're not a big fan of your main gig, maybe you're working in something that's not social impact, or maybe it's not the perfect job, but allows you to channel your funds into your passion projects. And the more you invest in your passion projects, whether it's training, whether it's equipment. I mean, for me, I did a lot of like buying and selling with used cameras, because I was originally just using my phone. It allows you to channel resources into your learning, your development, and your implementation of your hobbies, um, until you can get to a point where that could become your main gig. Or in my case, I have used my background as an evaluator, or as a mediator, because I'm working very closely with certain communities. I have convinced organizations to say, okay, I'm doing an evaluation anyways. I have to engage very deeply with various stakeholders. I have to get to know them. I have to build trust. These are also important, ethics of journalism too, right? So if I build a rapport with someone, um, that is something which is useful for getting more information. I'm being very open about the use of where the information is going to be shared, informed consent, and a lot of the build-up work for evaluation is all the build-up work for photojournalism. So I found a few cases, such as, for example, I was working with Mediators Beyond Borders as a peace synergist supporting a mediation, and I segued that into photography work, and also led to other photography work in Kenya. So it can have a good spiral effect in that sense. Um, but I'm saying, yeah, with anything in life, you have to nurture your hobbies, and sometimes your main work gets so busy that you don't get to um, practice your hobbies. So I just make it as convenient as possible, right? I did a lot of mobile photography when I couldn't bring my cameras out in places where it's volatile and high risk, like Sudan and Somalia, and that led to discovering the country in a different way. Also, allowing myself to feel that balance, and later on leading to content which I could use for, personal projects or, professional gigs.
So
Okay, great.
Kathleen, go ahead.
I thought you wanted to introduce the two
Okay, yeah,
audience questions.
Yeah, so we have lots of questions coming in. So hopefully, Marcus, you're okay with going 5 minutes longer? Okay. So this is from Shelly. I'm Shelly from Trelly Z. Just stumbled into the talk. Great to see you here, Shelly. I'm a founder. My sweet spot is product design. I wanted to mention the Designing Peace exhibition that is now in the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum. And then she says there's another part to the question, which is, so I'm somehow not showing the whole question. And my app, RefAid, for migrants and refugees, is in the exhibition. We're honored, but I want to say our entire business, Tech for Humanitarian Supply Chain, is based on passion, but is also profitable. So it sounds like Shelly has reached a nice mix of actually doing incredibly meaningful work, but found a way to sustain that. So one, Shelly, please put that in the chat so people can check it out, both the exhibition and the RefAid. And then there was, I think the comments from other people is, again, similar to this other one, is how in the world do you find like a way to do this? Like, should it be nonprofit, foundation? There are roles, particularly in foundations, where maybe you could do arts-based kind of community engagement. But for people who want to work at this intersection, one, what skills do you recommend they develop? And two, where do they either find the jobs, or like you're saying, you need to kind of create your own consulting opportunities?
So I would say when it comes to intersections, you have to work in, I think it's good to work in separate areas that, seemingly are unconnected, because then you develop, deep perspectives of those worlds. And I'll give you an example. I come from a project management background, working mainly in peace building, governance, and conflict sensitive development. During COVID, I facilitated a project for the STEPS initiative, and Jayu. And I remember receiving a comment from someone once saying that, they were so happy. It was like always on time with invoices, very organized, presentations are very good. And there's a stereotype, I think, that artists are not very good with time. And I feel that personally with myself sometimes too, because you can't rush a creative process. But of course, an organization wants to get invoices on time, for example. So the point I wanted to make is that, yeah, so you understand both worlds, right? I understand what donors want. I understand how program managers think. I understand, the artist experience as well too. I think it's good to work in various entities separately and find your own intersection point rather than start from the intersection point, because you may find that you are interested in, social impact curation, of art, whereas others may find, like myself, I don't want to manage an art organization, but I want to create, photojournalism works, and I also want to facilitate Photovoice programs. My goal is actually to start up a specific type of Photovoice program in the Philippines, but also so I can learn a bit more about my roots. So I have like that personal agenda, and just try and understand different people's perspectives as much as possible, because with the arts, funding is maybe, is easily cut from the social impact sector. Like during COVID, artists really suffered a lot too, right? So you need to be tapped in. The art world is very small. People can see your work very easily through social media. So it's all about building connections and building genuine interaction, not just leaving a like and then disappearing, but we're going to engage with the dialogue the same way, Craig, Kat, and I, we engage on each other's LinkedIn posts. We post questions. I've crowdsourced information on what's the best advice for XYZ, and I get responses from my network, and it makes me want to go and give back more. So it makes me want to learn more as a peace builder about the art world. It makes me want to learn more about peace building from the art perspective. Until I found my intersection. You don't know until you've tried. What you don't like will narrow you down the correct path.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcus, so much. And thank you for Shelley and an audience question. Laura has a question. I hope I don't do misjustice to your last name, Reinders. I don't know why I put myself trying to say the impossible last names. But before I ask Laura's question, I just want to highlight, tell me if this is a wrong appreciation I have of you, Marcus, but I think that one of your greatest skills is the ability to understand and speak peace building, but also speak arts and be like that thing about the different time frames and being able to navigate in those two close but very different universes. I think is a great skill that you have. And if we all are building our careers in an intersection, is just we don't only speak languages, but also I can speak nonprofit, I speak peace building, and I don't speak social entrepreneurship as well as I should. So I think that's a great skill that you have, and it may be a testament of how well you do with your career. And speaking of your networks, which you also mentioned, and this is a very important question, which that Laura has, which networks keep you going, Marcus? And yeah, what are your favorite go-to places? And you said you crowdsource your questions. Where are those places that you go to for questions?
Yeah, thank you very much for that, insightful, observation. I really do feel that language is very important. So, my goal of speaking is to, well, first listen more and be more of an empathetic listener, speaker second. And with language, I don't want to have to tune myself so much. So I just want my general language to be sort of as inclusive, layman's, because I don't really see any point in using advanced terminology. Like I might, throw it out in a cover letter here and there, but I want my practice and my work to be as inclusive as possible, not alienate anyone. And I think that that is useful in peace building. That's also useful in art. Um, so the question about networks and mentors. So I think a really good network was in school, because you spend so much time in school, maybe anywhere from 1 to 4 years. You're working on a lot of projects together. But what we don't realize is that this is the first, assuming we just came straight out of high school or very soon after, this is our first professional experience. This is our first reference. This is our first awareness that we're projecting of what we want to do and what our classmates want to do. And you spend more time with your classmates than you do with coworkers that you know them personally and professionally. And sometimes the personal aspect of how you work with someone is, maybe 60% of importance, and maybe the professional like skill and knowledge is maybe 40%. So I felt very comfortable using my classmates as a network, and also my teachers. I would always come back to my teachers, just update them on what I'm doing, just want to hear more about what they're doing, and just thank them for their support over the years. And that's also how I got a job teaching monitoring and evaluation at Humber College, because I had made aware of what I was doing. Um, and it just happened there was a gap in the monitoring and evaluation course, and I felt that since I was self-taught, very practice oriented, I think it would be very good for the college environment, and it was very successful in that sense. Other networks are just specific people I've met. I have a lot of contacts in the wellness industry because I've worked with wellness in peace building for, whether it's psychosocial response to trauma, or working with psychosocial support officers who were responding to incoming refugees in Somaliland, learning from them as well too, because they have specific skills, and also specific challenges. For example, in a humanitarian crisis, if an organization is pushing on psychosocial wellness, people might say, no, this is not useful to us right now. We need something in our hand. We need like some food or something, because this is the first point of survival that we understand. learning about those things are interesting. I mean, I have my artist networks that I've met from just going to art events, connecting with people on Instagram. I made a lot of good friends through Instagram, made a lot of good friends through LinkedIn and the online sphere, such as you both as well too. And sometimes I just take a shot and just send direct message to someone and try and draw on a connecting point. And it has led to, friendships and opportunities for me to either share or to see something back. PCDN is really good because it emulates an in-person networking space as effective as any that I've seen, or even building a connection, even if it's sort of more like one way because it's a podcast, but the social impact career podcast, I really do love them because if I have a long drive or if I need to clean for 40 minutes, what can make that, you know, what can build my mind? I just find something of interest and just makes for a very, very, very productive time. And I honestly feel like a mentor is almost speaking to me because they're very experienced personnel. And for that reason, I'm very honored to, even have been a guest on this. And I hope that, if what I have learned, if even 10% of that goes back to someone else, I'll be very happy.
Thank you, Marcus. So we have 2 minutes left. I'll ask a 30-second question, then Kata can wrap up. So what are you working on learning right now? Not working, what are you enjoying learning currently? And from your wide range of work experience in the development sector, what are the areas where you encourage other people to start building skills to be competitive and actually have an impact in the future?
So what I'm learning right now, beginning to learn, I'm currently just doing a short contract as a data analyst for a humanitarian company, which is a studio which produces cartoons and comics. So I'm learning about a little bit more. I mean, I have a background in this already, but learning a bit more deeply about how to evaluate storytelling. Um, I have a very strong M&E background, but I think the developer side is something that could add value. So I'm looking at basic coding right now to add to this. Um, and I think also like the language will be important too, because I'm planning to base out of the Middle East, North Africa. So I'm brushing up on my Arabic. Um, a mentor of mine told me that every opportunity you have should either give you one of three things if you work in the social impact world. So either new skills, a new language, or something new region-wise. And region-wise can be, within one country. It can be within one small town, for example, right? So working with different diverse groups, for example. So I think that is what I would mention for that. And just to tie back to the mentors question, I had no mentors when I came into this field, and I really wanted one. I wondered how did anybody get um, mentors, and I was kind of envious. But I realized that indirectly through speaking with others, a mentor doesn't have to be a really old person who worked 40 years in the UN. A mentor could be someone younger than you. A mentor could be someone, in your company. It's someone that you just have a circle of accountability, and you can tell them about your job application process, or you can tell them about how you handled something at work, and a safe space that person can check you and say that, maybe you could be more mindful of XYZ, or maybe your, communication could be more inclusive, or your language, something like that. That to me is mentorship. It doesn't have, like I was, mistaken in the beginning. It doesn't, I'm not searching for a chief in the United Nations to mentor me. The mentorship sort of energy is all around us, and we could even find it in our own household. Those are not even in our fields.
Marcus, I think you really are the embodiment of how to demystify and decolonize, and a lot of things that you have said are just spot on. In fact, you answered the question even before I asked you. So my last question in the 0 seconds we have left is pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Sorry, can you repeat that again, please?
Yes, it's the last question because you really wrap it up beautiful. So it's a very important question to know whether I continue my friendship with you. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Honestly, I'm open to anything, and I don't think that anything is wrong when it comes to food. Truly, that's just not like it's just not for me.
That's okay. We can still be friends because I am a fierce pineapple on pizza lover.
We can
I
definitely
just
be
wanted to,
friends.
yes, we are gonna be friends in spite of
over the great pineapple divide.
exactly the
Half
pineapple
half.
debacle. But thank you so much. We're over time. Really thank you for everyone who came to this very honest. I love how you're you're developing your own sense of identity and a professional trajectory that is truly exemplary. And thank you for being our friend. And until next time in the Social Change Career Podcast. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Marcus. And thank you, everyone, for attending. And bye bye.
Thank you very much.